Well, this is InnovATEBIO, and it's our Leadership Institute, and I'm very thrilled today to have Dr. Anthony Atala from the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine, where he is the director. Welcome, Dr. Atala.
It's good to be with you both, Russ and Tom. Thank you for having me.
Also is my co-PI on this grant, which is a National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Grant based out of Austin Community College called InnovATEBIO, Tom Tubon from Medicine.
Hi, Russ. Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
And backing us up today is Sean Killebrew from Forsyth Technical Community College, who will handle the technical aspect of this interview. So welcome, everybody, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Russ. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. It's great to be with you.
The title of this talk, Dr. Atala, is Leadership in Emerging Technologies, and we couldn't think of a better person to actually be interviewed for this particular topic. And so I'm just going to start with a couple of questions, and I'll pass it over to Tom if that's okay with you. So, Dr. Atala, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and your role at WFirm?
Sure. Actually, I'm a pediatric urologic surgeon. I trained I went to medical school, then did my surgical training. And then during my training, I started doing research and then got into the area of regenerative medicine, which I've been doing that research now for 31 years. I can't believe it, 31 years. And now I direct the institute here at Wake Forest called the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative.
Dr. Atala, when we first met many years ago, I think it's almost 15 now, I had a nice conversation with you that we talked about kidney transplantation and that I'd worked with a company called Burroughs Wellcome. And at the time, we were working on a protocol for Imuran, which was one of the first drugs used in transplantation. And you got very excited. And I got very excited because you show a classic picture in your lectures of that first transplantation that happened in Massachusetts. So I was really excited by that. Dr. Atala, what is the mission of WFirm?
The mission's very simple, actually, and that is to improve patients' lives through regenerative medicine. And we talk about the mission all the time, and it's really, if you walk in at the Institute and you ask anybody what the mission is, they'll be able to tell you, because we talk about the mission often. And I really do believe you cannot talk about the mission often enough.
What a great mission. Tom, over to you.
Absolutely. Dr. Atala, it's great to have you on board. Always a pleasure to see you. I have a question about the talent pool for WFirm. And you've hired a large and very talented team there at Wake Forest Institute of Regenerative Medicine. Could you speak to the traits of the kind of team members you're looking for when you hire for folks at WFirm?
Yes, thank you, Tom. That's a great question. Really, the core values of our institute are innovation, teamwork, and integrity. And those are our core values. So we really do try to identify folks who really represent those values and embrace them, and that they can really work within that framework of the kind of individual that we want at our institution and our institute, because we are in an area that is, as you know, extremely complex. Regenerating tissues and organs is not something that you can do just by pushing a button and out comes a tissue-engineered organ. It really does require innovation, because you're constantly innovating to make these things work. And it requires teamwork, because, you're looking at molecular biology, cell biology, material sciences, software development, hardware development, 3D printers. You're looking at all this array of technologies. And of course, teamwork, because not one person can be an expert on everything. So you need teamwork to advance the technologies. And finally, integrity, because, as you can imagine, the science has to be very rigorous, it has to be reproducible, and it has to be at a high standard. And so everything that we do needs to have integrity behind it before we ever launch a product to a patient, which we have now, we've now put in about 15 applications of our technologies into patients in different types of tissues and organs that we've engineered and other types of therapies. At the end of the day, you need to make sure that those technologies are absolutely as safe as they can possibly be before you ever put them into a patient. And therefore, having the right team is critical to what we do.
Well, you certainly have a fabulous team at Wake Forest Institute of Regenerative Medicine. So a 30-year-long plus career has really been quite a long period of time to make some really important decisions. And I want to pivot a little bit because I want to ask you if you wouldn't mind walking us through one of your biggest W firm professional decisions that you've made and how you've approached it.
You know, really, I must say that the biggest professional decision we've made for the Institute and the technology in general was really making that transfer, the very first technology we developed, to a patient, right? Because we had been working, as you can imagine, working for years developing these technologies. And we started working with these technologies when it really was, the thought was really, this is science fiction. In fact, the NIH was not even funding this area. You know, we talked to the NIH director and he said, when you prove to us this is real science, that's when we will fund it. And with reason, right? The NIH wants to make sure that people are doing responsible research. But really, people thought it was science fiction when we got started. And so, and of course, now the field is very well funded and we can move forward. But getting to that point of actually proving that these cells could generate that, first of all, just getting the cells to grow. When we started this work 31 years ago, most human cell types could not be grown and expanded outside the body. So we just had the very first challenge, how to make cells grow. And the next challenge was, you know, how do you put these cells together? And how can these cells form tissue? And how can they be vascularized, having good blood supply? How can we make sure that they function normally? Can we make sure that they do the right things? It was challenge after challenge after challenge. But the biggest decision that we ever made was, okay, are we ready to take this to a patient? Because an engineered organ had not yet been implanted into a patient at that point, inside the body. And we were, of course, you know, how much can you test the structure before you actually put it into a patient? That was really the decision, right? And you know, we had done all the work. We had done all the science behind it. We could reproducibly do it in preclinical models over and over and over again, and it was successful. But at some point, you have to say to yourself, we have to go to the patient. And of course, it was a big decision because, as you know, we were going in uncharted territory. We did not know what to expect. And of course, there was a lot of sleepless nights when we actually made that happen. But that process, bringing that technology to that first patient, then really opened up the door for us, because after we were able to show success, we could then go into other tissues and organs, and we could help to expand the ability to improve patients' lives through regenerative medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Atala. We actually we follow your work very closely in my courses that I teach at the college. I run a number of courses in stem cells and regenerative medicine for workforce development. And so we follow you as one of the pioneers for tissue engineering and creation of these types of new organs and such. And so I thank you for your answer. Russ, I'm gonna pivot right back to you with your question.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Dr. Atala, 2020, a turbulent year, pandemic. What has this experience taught you as a leader?
You know, it's interesting, right? Like many others, I have personally seen people not just rise to the challenges presented, but they have gone beyond what they thought they could do during this pandemic. And it's really interesting, right? Everybody had to really pivot their direction and pivot their activities. And you know, it's a new normal. Life was different. You know, we obviously could not stop what we were doing, right? We had a lot of things going on but we could pause some of the things we were doing. We could move some of the other things forward. And at the end of the day, we had to basically change our direction to enter the COVID area of research that we entered fairly quickly. And so what this experience taught me is that people really, when a challenge arises, everybody has been able to come together and they've been able to rise to the challenge and solve the problems that we had to solve and really get beyond it. I mean, here we are having this meeting via Zoom, right? So we kept going. We kept going with Zoom meetings and everybody really was trying to see what is the best thing that they could do to make things better. And of course, I'm at an institute that is within a medical center. And as a clinician, I've seen colleagues exemplify resilience and exemplify grace under pressure. And to me, witnessing all of these activities has taught me as a leader that collectively we can do amazing things together.
My gosh, I think that is just a wonderful answer, and it is the truth, isn't it? I mean, when your team has actually stretched and actually forced to pivot, as you say, and to change and to be flexible, it's amazing what the product is if everybody can coalesce and come together. It's just amazing. So thank you for that answer, Dr. Atala. That's a great helpful suggestion to the folks that are going to take the Leadership Institute. Tom, I'm going to pivot back to you.
Great, thanks, Russ. So, Dr. Atala, you spoke of innovation, teamwork, integrity, and just in the last question about resilience. And this really does paint a great picture for the emerging leadership in our next generation of bioscience. So for final thoughts, and when we think about these young leaders, especially in the tech fields, what should they be cognizant of as they move into leadership positions?
I think the most important thing really is not to put limitations on your thoughts, on yourself, or on your actions. And as a leader, typically, you really have to analyze things very carefully, and you have to really be well informed. You cannot jump into action. But the most important thing is to really not put those limits to yourself of what is possible. I think the higher you reach, the higher you can get. Knowing, of course, what the obstacles are, knowing what limitations are, you go beyond that and how to solve it. And and really not to limit what direction you're going to go into. I never thought I would be doing research. That was not my career path. I had absolutely no intention of doing that in addition to my medical and clinical practice, which I still do. But once I got exposed to research and I saw what it was, it changed my life. I said, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to pursue. And I think the main lesson for me there was that you really need to be exposed to as many things as possible during your career. And when those doors open up, walk through those doors. They're opening for a reason. And you will never know what and how your life will do and how it'll change unless you walk through the door and you're exposed to it. You will never know what your passion is unless you walk through that door and get exposed to it. So the more things you get exposed to, the better it is, because you will then realize what is it that you are best at and how can you move forward.
Dr. Atala, I appreciate the passion in your response and your contributions as a pioneer to regenerative medicine. You're truly an inspiration. And I appreciate your time here with these interviews and the carefully thought out responses that you've given us. Russ, do you have any closing comments you would like to make?
I'm just going to say, Dr. Atala, thanks so much for contributing today to the Leadership Institute for InnovATEBIO. It's really been a pleasure to have this interview with you. It's very inspiring for me personally. And, we've had these talks before, but we've never really gone on record, never done them in a session where we actually videoed you. We have done some really interesting lecture series, and I'm really appreciative of that. But I think that this, for me personally, is very, very exciting and very, very motivating for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Russ. Thank you so much, Tom. It's great to be with both of you, and thank you for what you're doing and for this program, which is so needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean?